This is BVI Channel 1. You're welcome back again on this platform where we bring you up to speed, updates of what is happening. I can tell you as much as many Nigerians are looking up onto the tribunal, the petition P2B submitted contending the result of this election. But P2B have been very, very slow. Very, very slow to my liking, and it is becoming a disturbing situation. It is not just my opinion. I want you to listen to this son that said it the way it is.
Former President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Dr. Lisa Agbakoba SAN, has urged the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal to conclude petitions on the February 25 presidential election before the inauguration of a new president on May 29. Agbakoba, in a statement he personally signed on Monday, urged the tribunal to adopt the procedures used for speedy conclusion of arbitration matters in its approach to the cases. According to him, the first is the interpretation of Section 134 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as to whether securing 25% of votes in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, is compulsory to be president. And on the second, he queried the legality of a candidate being allowed to stand for presidential or vice presidential election when he is at the same time a senatorial candidate. Joining us now on the morning show is Dr. Lisa Agbakoba, a senior advocate of Nigeria and a former president of the Nigerian Bar Association. Good morning, Dr. Agbakoba, and thank you for joining us on the morning show. Well, let's start with your...
Good morning, Robin. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Let's start with your proposal that election petition cases at the Presidential Election Tribunal can be concluded within 7 days if the tribunal takes a more proactive approach to it. But how feasible is that? Considering the fact that election petitions have time limitations, they have a time frame. The Constitution talks about 180 days. When you appeal, you have 60 days. And then we're dealing with an election in which you probably have over 10,000 polling units. How do you do all of that within 7 days and before May 29? Shouldn't you be recommending that the Constitution has to be reviewed first? That challenge about time limitation should be addressed and properly defined. Otherwise, how would the courts do it in 7 days or before May 29?
Yeah, thank you very much. There's a context in which I've recommended that we should finish the petitions as fast as possible. And I think 7 days is a good time to go. The fact that the Constitution prescribes a time limit doesn't mean that that time limit must actually run. So the context of my call is that the polity is overheated. The other day, the Minister of Information is accusing Mr. P2B of treason. People want interim government, all kinds of things going around. There's a whole shebang of things that seems to want to destabilize Nigeria. The DSS is shouting that there are people who are all over the place doing things. And the simple problem is just to resolve the election petitions. So the question is not whether it is doable, it is whether it can be done. So I start by saying that the judicial philosophy of Nigeria is about 100 years old. Nigeria is not known for speed. Why is it possible that Ghana finishes its own election petition in 30 days? So why can't we also do it here? Why should we have 360 days to do something that is fairly simple? So the new international gold standard, and I sit as a senior arbitrator in the City of London, and what we do is we apply case management. So my first recommendation is to say, the issues presented to the tribunals, are they amenable to quick resolution? And I think there are 3 issues which you've outlined that are amenable to quick resolution, one way or the other. Now, under the Kenyan procedure, those questions that I've set out are decided in exactly 1 day. So if I was the presiding judge of the tribunal, I would give 2 hours to the petitioner to establish the case whether 25% of FCT is relevant in the consideration of who is the president or not. I would give time to Mr. Tinubu's people to reply, and I'll deliver a ruling at 6 p.m. What's the difficulty? These are purely matters of law. So it is absolutely feasible. If those 3 questions do not succeed, then the part A of the petition would be now to do what you say, take the issue of electoral malpractice, which I concede will be a lot longer. But I have a strong feeling that those 3 questions I have set out can resolve the petition one way or the other. And it can be done in 7 days. If Kenya can do it in 14 days, why do we need 360 days to do our own? Are we not more highly judicially educated than Kenya? So come on, and I also would, without criticizing the lawyers in the petition, since they filed the petition, I haven't heard anything from them. There's all sorts of procedures by which you can front load a case, push it, set out procedural issues, set out jurisdictional issues for the tribunal to determine. That's number 1. 2, the tribunal itself can, of its own motion, raise questions. So we've read all these petitions, and we think we can dispose of this petition if we set out some questions that, if taken, can resolve the entire thing. I'm concerned that the politics is overheated, and the way to go is to see if we can get the petitions resolved before May 29. The elections were in February. That's about 4 months. What's the difficulty about resolving these cases well before the handover? Kenya has a procedure whereby they lay out a policy. There shall be no inauguration until the petitions are complete. And in the OAS panel, which I was a member, we set out that procedure. There's a certain unfairness for a petitioner to challenge the president-elect who goes on to get inaugurated. That's what's causing all the problem. So let's give it a go. Let the judiciary give it a go. Let the lawyers in the tribunal give it a go to see whether we cannot accomplish what I've described in my letter. Kenya has a 30-day timeline. Nobody waits for the end of the timeline. Once you file your petition, you should be ready to make preemptory strikes. So if I was in the petition, I filed a petition on Monday. On Tuesday, I will file all my papers and request the court to determine certain jurisdictional questions. The fact that I have 180 days doesn't mean I should wait to 179 days to then begin to hustle. Everybody agrees that the politics is overheated. So we need speed. The point is that in modern judicial case management philosophy, there are steps you take to arrive at a conclusion. So step 1 would mean that if the decision of the tribunal states that 25% of FCT is not required, that point fails. If the tribunal says that 25% of FCT is required, then the petition succeeds. Now, so as you go up the steps, you will come to the point where the most difficult question will be posed, which is electoral irregularity. Mr. Robert Clark was on your program yesterday, and he gave a description of how petitions work. Petitions work on 2 levels. The first one is the technical level. All the 3 points I laid out, they are jurisdictional, they don't need any facts. You don't need a single documentation from INEC, because on the facts, Mr. Tinubu did not win 25% in Abuja. So you don't need any access from INEC. It's stated in the petition. So the question is a legal question. What is the consequence of Mr. Tinubu not getting 25% in Abuja? Is it fatal or is it not fatal? You don't need any recourse to INEC for any documentation. If the question is answered in the negative, Tinubu goes through. If it is answered in the positive, Tinubu loses. You go to the next question. What is the consequence of Mr. Tinubu's vice presidential candidate being on the ballot of senatorial? Is it fatal in view of Section 35 of the Constitution, one way or the other? And so on and so forth. So you exhaust the jurisdictional and procedural questions. If all those questions succeed, then you are within the time to dismiss the petition or allow it. Now, the more difficult one is if the procedural and jurisdictional points do not succeed. Then we're bogged down by the electoral irregularities, and I agree here that access to documentation will be necessary. But to sit down and do nothing, I haven't heard a thing from the courts, I haven't heard a thing from the legal team, is the point that I'm saying is irritating. and the polity is overheated. If you give a man an opportunity to say, you're saying that Mr. Tinubu should not be president on the basis that he didn't win this. Tell me why. Do you need 20 days to do that? You don't need 20 days. It's a legal question whether "and" in Section 134 is contiguous or not. It's very simple. A bench ruling can be given on that. I've done big arbitrations in the City of London and decided the point in 3 hours. So there's nothing that, you see, the problem is our judicial philosophy. I'm just looking at the Kenyan one. It says here, sustaining judiciary transformation. That's the Kenyan one. Sustaining judiciary transformation. How can this country, the so-called giant of Africa, run a judicial system that is 100 years old? That's the problem. The NJC is not doing anything to create a new... Yes?
You know, I get that point about best practices, about gold standard and all of that. But this Section 134,
yes,
you have referred to it about twice now as one of the questions to be addressed. Now, you raised the issue in January when you wrote a letter to INEC, asking INEC for a possible interpretation of Section 134. Well, I would like to know whether you got a reply.
Yes.
And then as a senior advocate of Nigeria, what's your own opinion, which you have not documented, about the interpretation of that Section 134, sub 2 in particular?
Well, I did a letter to INEC, and if they had answered me, maybe you wouldn't have been in this logjam. But I had an interview. They didn't reply, by the way. But I had, the closest they came to reply was an interview I did on TVC with my good friend Festus Okoye, and he admitted that it was an issue that required to be resolved. And I was surprised that they did nothing. My own view is that Section 134 applied literally, because the rules of interpretation say if you read something and it's so clear to you, then you don't need to interpret it. The thing says you must win a quarter of the votes in 2/3 of 36 states. And so what do you want to say? The answer is obvious.
So the presidential candidate does not have to get 25% in FCT. Otherwise, it will amount to an absurdity. If he already has 25% in, say, about 28 states.
No, I didn't say that. I said
no, I want you to break it down.
25%.
I want you to break it down in a way that the ordinary
man... I've just broken it down.
No, let's apply
I've just broken it down. Ruben, I've broken it down. You want to put words in my mouth, which I won't accept. It's so simple. You get a quarter of the votes in 25%, in a quarter of the votes in 2/3 of 36 states. That is what the law says, which is 24. So that's one part of it. It goes on to say, and. What does that mean? And the FCT. So as far as I'm concerned, you must also win 25% in the FCT. But that's not for me to say, because I'll be judging what is before the tribunal. So we think the tribunal can answer this question quite easily in 1 hour. That's my point.
That is it. This is just an extraction of an interview he had with Arise Television. You can go back to Arise Television and watch the entire interview. What I'm trying to bring out here is that I don't know why Peter Obi should allow this petition to linger this long before it is even heard. Up to today, I not heard anything from the tribunal, anything from the lawyers of Peter Obi regarding this matter. When will it be heard? Or is it when Tinubu have been sworn in, we'll start dragging our feet? I must tell you, it will be very difficult to collect the cup you use in giving baboon water after he must have started or finished drinking it. It will be difficult to retrieve the mandate of Nigerian people which they gave to Peter Obi from the hands of Tinubu if he gets sworn in. And that is my concern. And I believe it is the concern of millions of Nigerians who stood and voted for Peter Obi. You know, Nigeria is shredded in impunity and in corruption in every of their practices. That is why you see all this delay happen. Just to, push it to the point that this man will be sworn in. Like it or not, just like he said. As the thing continues, Tinubu will eventually be sworn in. And I can tell you, it will be game over. It will be too late. It will take only a miracle, an intervention of Nigerian people to retrieve that mandate from them. Yes. To be honest with you, it will no longer be a court thing. Forget about it. If this thing continues to be delayed, and I can tell you, just like they will always say, justice delayed is justice denied. Once Tinubu, the illegitimate government is sworn in, the unconstitutional government is sworn in, if they dare try it, they are pushing their luck. They are pushing their luck. Because I can tell you, Nigerians, we are only hoping and keeping calm. I'm not telling, this is not just my word. I am telling you this. I'm telling the Nigerian government, the federal government, the Buhari government. Nigerians you are seeing that are very quiet and calm. They are looking up to the outcome of that tribunal. Just go ahead to go and hand over to an illegitimate government, to a government that did not meet up to the constitutional requirements to be sworn in as the president and vice president of this country. Hey, you will see Nigeria boil and burn. Don't blame anybody. Blame yourselves. And to Peter Obi and his legal team, I don't know why you guys have you are contributing to this whole thing. I don't know why you're not pushing hard enough. So that, is it because they will tell me, you are pushing Nigerians to take. Let me tell you, there is nothing illegal about Nigerian people rising up to stop an illegitimate and unconstitutional government, because the constitution of this country have empowered Nigerians, as the sovereignty of this country is in their hands. The sovereignty of Nigeria is in the hands of Nigerian people. And it is theirs to protect the constitution and the democracy of Nigeria. And there's no two ways about it. Your intimidation, rolling out tanks, and the rest of them cannot change much. They're just waiting. They're just calm. Let anything happen to that, and you understand that meekness is not weakness. That Nigerian people are calm is not because they are afraid. Because they are people who are law-abiding. Nigerian people are the most law-abiding people you can think of. If you doubt it, go abroad and you see how they conduct themselves. Mostly, it is the Nigerian politicians who have turned this country upside down and made it an animal jungle. They are the ones that are promoting anarchy and breakdown of law at any level. We saw it at the elections. So, I'm just a voice crying out loud, like that of the voice in the wilderness. Federal government, don't look for who set Nigeria on fire. Look for yourselves, because you will be held responsible for whatever that will become of this country very soon. Because some people, some mischievous element too, in the name of agitation, we say, "Oh, did I tell you it is better Nigeria boy and born?" My concern is who will eventually be the victims if anything starts happening. If there is a breakdown of law, it is still the ordinary people. And that is my concern. I don't want it to get to that point. I know you politicians have secured a life outside this country. You don't care about what is happening and what is happening to the people. But I can tell you, there is always a breaking point. There is always a limit to anything. Don't cross that limit. And don't push Nigerians to the wall. You are pressing your luck. And I can tell you, it will not all go well. There will be no hiding place. I'm just making this because I'm an advocate for good governance and a defender of rule of law. Let the rule of law be applied. That is just my own take. I want you to help me share this video, and to P2B, let them do everything within their power to push this case. There are things that are simple without much interpretation. Watch my next video. You will get my response to Soyinka, because these are the kind of mentality they sell that is making Nigeria go backward. Watch that video. I'm signing out from here. Bye-bye for now.